Okay, back to assembling. Now, a little tip on these bushings for the opposite side of the differential. Some of them come with the grease fitting already installed, some do not. Install the grease fitting before you press it into your fender, because when this rotates, your fender is right here. It's not going to screw in. And make sure that they've got it aiming away from the fender. Just a little tip. Save you some grief when you get that pressed in, and then you're going to have to try and figure out, how do I get the grease fitting in? Okay, now we've got a gasket. These are the new style. Again, a lot of stuff is different. The new gaskets have 13 holes punched in them because I believe they have found out when this thing is setting like this, with all this lube in here, the bottom side is leaking. So they went from 10 bolts to 13. They put more bolts in the bottom to help keep it from leaking. So these new gaskets will work. You're just not going to use all the holes. And we are going to assemble this dry for now. I want to make sure everything fits good because I'm adding these Belleville washers and O-rings. Plus, it's about 20 minutes after 10 Thursday morning, and the sealant he wants me to use won't come in until 1 o'clock. So we're going to put this together dry. And the front, or I should say, it's not the front and back, it's the two ends have bolts and nuts in them. They don't use just plain bolts. Get these holes to line up here. I don't know why they did that. I have no clue. Just, I guess, to give you a little grief. So we're going to put this nut on here. Well, not with that, we're going to. Now, I don't want to snug that up too tight. Where's my other one? There it is. So I want to line up these gasket holes. Oh, these bolts and nuts are a pain. Using this cork gasket is going to give me a little help as far as if there's any length difference by using them washers and O-rings, because the gasket that was on here is a paper gasket. or I should say asbestos gasket. I kind of got wondering about that as I was wire brushing this off of the chain case and the differential. So I lit it with a match and it burned until all the oil and grease was gone, and this is what it looks like. It didn't hurt it a bit. So if you're working on one of these old machines and you will have to wire brush this stuff off of the covers and the fender, wear a dust mask. I breathed enough asbestos when I worked at dressers. And we're gonna put these in here. Each one of these bolts have a lock washer that the new ones do not. It's one of these, if I can hang on to that, the star type lock washer, which I think works a whole lot better than the split lock washers that we have mostly today. Now we just have that snugged up. It's not really tight. Let's see how tight this bolt is back here. Not bad. Doesn't seem to be pinching that any at all. We will put the star lock washer, the standard washer, and the flange nut. This is what a flange nut looks like. It has a built-in lock or built-in washer. Okay. Now, to assemble this thing and make sure I'm not going to have any binding issues when he puts it on his machine, I've got a rear case back there, or main case, that's off of another machine that is the same width and size as his is. So we're going to get that up here, and we're actually going to assemble this thing complete on that case. And when it's all done and everything's lined up and all the side play is gone, I'll slip it off in one piece just like he did and box it up and send it to him. So now I got to clear off some of this stuff and get that case up here. So I'll be back. Okay, we're going to put this fender on first, basically because it's lighter. You don't have the axle in it. I got out my finger ratchet. You don't use these things very often, but they're kind of handy to have. Get the bolt started in here. These bolts are sometimes hard to get started because they're triangular shaped. If you put your fingers on here and turn it, you can feel it. And why they're that way is because they are self-tapping. They don't tap these holes. They shoot them babies in there with a gun and it cuts the threads. Not very well. I did just run a tap through here and clean the threads out, so these bolts would go in a little better. And that's really tight enough. I'm gonna grab one more thing. I ran over and got one of my spacer bars because I want to keep this thing aligned the best I can. Let me spin you around a little bit. Okay, now we're going to put this axle in. And the reason I put that fender on first is because now it can hold this one up for me. Try to get that started left-handed, which isn't all that easy when you're right-handed. There we go. Interesting. This machine does not have a spreader bar. That one's got to go in a little tighter. I got a crack here. Tighten all these up so I make sure my spacing is correct. I do have this bar off of my machine that I can stick in here. This will help alignment issue. I got to grab two more fender bolts. I'm glad I keep all this stuff. Let's see, we need two of them. I wonder when they started putting spreader bars on these things. Boy, that one sure don't want to go in good. Wow. Well, that certainly turns good. I guess I won't be able to use that. There's no place to put it. He sent me the paperwork for this machine. And according to this schematic, it does not have a spreader bar on it. It does have this. I mean, you got to have this because that this hole here is where your linkage connects and lines up with a hole in the case, so the thing will shift. But there's no spreader bar. I was going to surprise him and stick one on it. Well, that's different. It almost looks like they used the same die to stamp out both fenders, but I don't know how they could, because they're opposites, but they've got all the stamped holes in this fender, including the bolt hole for the differential to bolt onto. I have no clue why they would do that. That just floors me. But now I can see how much, you can't, maybe. Now I can see how much room I have here to take up side plate. You do not want side plate. That's pretty stiff right now because the, what do they call that? I wouldn't call it a seal. Hexagon nylon hex washer splash. So apparently all that seal is supposed to do is keep the oil from splashing out, which if you've ever put double aught lube in here, that stuff ain't gonna splash anyway. And they only have one fill hole instead of two like we have today. Like, why do you need two? I would put one down here and forget this one, because they tell you today's machines to pull this one out, put the lube in up here, and when it fills up and starts coming out this hole, to stop. Well, they tell you the same thing on the chain case. Put the lube in here, and as it fills up and starts coming out this hole, to stop. Why do you need two on the new one? I don't know. Maybe they think we're a bunch of idiots. I have no clue. Another thing that's different with this machine is the bolt pattern for the rims on the tires. There's 4 on these instead of 3 like the new ones have. So I'm going to get some measurements and see what I need to fill in this gap, put it back together, and it's kind of a trial and error thing. Just put some in, and if you use the, or I guess if you do it the way they tell you, I don't know where that little bag went, you can cut them and snap them on, and you don't have to take the thing all apart. But I don't really like to cut them if I don't have to. I need 3/16 of an inch to fill that gap. So I'll be back. Okay, we filled in the gap. As you can see, I have no side play at all. And I think I'm going to add one more in here when I take this apart again. Get that wiggle down in there. That fits pretty good. Now it's either that, or if your machine is all assembled, which this one is not, you can cut that and snap it in and put the boot on. Works fine. Now the issue I have, the chain case. My sprocket and shaft, which is this thing, is on back order with no ETA. I don't know when I'm going to be getting it. They don't know when they're going to be getting it. And another thing on this that is puzzling is someone drilled a hole through there for a cotter key apparently, which you don't need. The only thing I can think of is the nut that goes on here is not a self-locking nut, and it came apart on them. So they screwed this together. Oh, it goes on tight. So they could put a cotter key through it. And I know the factory didn't do it because it's not on center. Plus, if you look right, there's a hole there and there's a hole there. This side, they drilled 2 holes. I don't know. So I'll dig out and see if I can find a self-locking nut to put on the new shaft. I dug out one of my old shafts that will be the same as what I think is coming, because I don't think I'm going to get one of these. This end, if you line up the gears, this end looks pretty much the same. With the exception, this has a groove in it for a O-ring to help seal that leak, because a lot of these leak. This end, however, is longer. Is that going to give me a problem? I don't know until I get it and I start assembling it. Another issue I may have to deal with, this shoulder is what bumps up against the inner race on the bearings. And this one is 805 thousandths long. This shoulder, and you see the gap, is 745 thousandths. That's 60 thousandths difference. That's probably going to cause a problem. So I'll have to take this to the shop. Hopefully this isn't too hard. I can check it in the Rockwell to see how hard these are. And I'm going to have to shave off 30 thousandths off of both sides of this. That could be interesting. But hey, you know, keeps life interesting. What would you do if you got everything and all the pieces were right? So this is as far as I can go with this. I'll probably set it off to the side and get back on my 33-inch and see if I can get something done with that. Or I might just say heck with it, leave it here and take a break. I'm getting a little tired of YouTube, I guess. I started this so when I retired, I could make a little income. But since they changed their criteria on how they pay, you don't get squat. $130 a month isn't worth my time for anything. When I first started this YouTube channel, I had a viewer get a hold of me, and he's a computer whiz. He said there's a company, or I don't know what you'd call them. There is a YouTube channel or something out there that monitors your emails if you sign up with them. So if somebody sent me an email and it was on, say, a Lawn Boy lawnmower that I don't work on a whole lot, they would take that email and send it to somebody that does work on lawn boys exclusively, like I pretty much exclusively on snappers. And if somebody over here gets an email on a snapper, they would send that to me. Well, they charge $4.95 per email. And then they pay me a percent. I don't know how it works out, but I would have worked out better doing that than I ever am going to more work out on getting any money out of Google for the commercials they put on my channel. I would be better off to tell them take all the commercials off my channel so they don't annoy my viewers, and just go by getting paid off of emails. Now, if he said if they send you an email and you answer it and it doesn't completely solve the problem, the following emails are free, which I get some emails. I might do 30 or 40 emails in one right after another, back and forth until we get the problem solved. I don't know, it's a lot of work for nothing. And I hate to just give it up and quit, but it takes up way too much of my time. I don't get anything else done. And with taking care of my mother-in-law's place, that's a lot of work. So I'm done grumbling. And I'll decide if I'm going to jump back on to 33 or just wait until my part comes in. So until next time, work safe, have fun, keep snapping, and I'll talk to you soon. So long.